So hello everyone, my name is Marcin Hase. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Sofgent, a company that specializes in providing services in, I would say, a broader field of IoT. What we are doing, we're helping our customers manage these technical innovations associated with IT. We are helping them gather data and process this data into knowledge, deliver this data whenever and knowledge whenever it needs to be, to make business decisions, and we kind of cover the whole flow. But today I would like to talk to you about technologies that can help with something that some of our customers, I would even say most of our customers, have problems, or I would say maybe they could do that better. And we're talking here about workflow processes and employee safety. And this is kind of an interesting session because here I'm trying to bridge the technology, IoT technology, and some real applications that we are going to be talking about in here. And just in the flow of these presentations, I decided to pick up on specific industry, and I will be referring to manufacturing industry in these presentations, but I would like to point out in the beginning that this has way more applications. We see this applicable a lot in the healthcare and the logistics. So just think about it from the perspective of a solution, not just these applications that I would like to show to you and explain to you today, just because we wanted to make sure that we're kind of getting into the topic. Sofgent, I just want to mention maybe one word about the company. There's one thing that makes us a little bit different than any other technology provider integrator for IoT. We actually build our own software building blocks that we use in order to speed up the deployment of IoT. We actually have dedicated building blocks for these technologies that the colleague from Microsoft was talking about earlier, that could be used in order to enable the connectivity, enable security, and so on and so forth. And with that, we can run our projects, IoT projects, much faster and therefore also cheaper. So that's an advantage that we're bringing into the table when we are realizing IoT projects. But let's get into the topic. So I was thinking about what to talk about if it comes to workflow process optimizations. It's a buzzword, and everybody in manufacturing, they look into lean, they look into the solutions and options, how this should be really efficient and optimized. And we're living kind of in difficult times right now. There are certain changes that are happening globally. Sofgent, as a company, we do have operations in Europe, we do have operations here in US, and in Europe especially we see a big influence of geopolitical situations. We see challenges with from economical standpoint. We see the cost of the energy going up. Therefore, manufacturers, they have problems associated with the prosperity of their businesses, because right now this costs more to produce. And this is happening here as well because we see inflation kind of hitting everywhere. And I would say these days there is no really reasons to not look into savings. And savings seems to be in the time when we are maybe not in recession but hitting, maybe close, maybe we will not be, but maybe we will be. This is time for look into this. And to be perfectly honest, the smart companies, there's companies that are sort of looking forward into the future. They're not waiting for real recession or real situation where they're going to have to save. They rather try to implement something that they can right away. And take a look into that. If they save and there is no recession, perfect. There's going to be more profitable. There'll be more margin for them. If they save and then there is recession, they will sustain their business and they will go and move on. And this is why this is so important. And this has actually a lot to do what I will be talking today. If it comes to cost savings. And we can look into the ways of savings. And if you think about savings and you have a manufacturing facility or a hospital, the first thing that comes into your mind if it comes to saving is, I'm going to have to fire people. I'm going to have to reduce my staff because that is going to give me labor cost reduction. On the other side, you'll also be looking into maybe cutting a budget for digital transformation, cutting a budget for buying a new machine, maybe running a digital transformation projects that will allow you to work more efficiently. But the question is this really where this company should look into savings? I don't think so, right? Especially if the talents that they are in the company are required in order to produce these goods that they're producing, especially that the digital transformation is only one way that is allowing these companies to be competitive in the future. They should actually not look into that. they should look on something else. And there are areas that people can save. And here this subject of this presentation is coming into playing here. Workflow process optimizations. Every single process can be optimized. And if you look into process per se, we're working with a lot of companies on the lean side. There is always a possibility to do things more efficient, right? There is always a way to do that better. And if we go into that, and if we really are able to manage to convert our workflow processes to be more efficient, then I'm sure there will be savings, and we can confirm the savings through our experience with this type of a topic. And in manufacturing, there is a lot to save. In healthcare, I will give you over this presentation some examples. But before we get into that, I would like to tell you a little bit more about how people optimizing their workflows. There's a tool called 5YS and 1H. And if you have answers to these questions, then you are able to optimize your workflow. So if you know who is doing what is happening, where, when, and why, and then of course how this is done, then you kind of have everything that you need to know in order to put together the improvements, right? And just having one moment information about all of this, on answers to all of these questions is not enough. You kind of need to collect this 5 Ys and H over time. And then analytics that you would run on the top of this data would allow you to actually find out where are the weakest points of your procedures. So now the challenge, because answering for all of these questions, it's actually maybe easy in one moment, but collecting the batch of data for a period of 3 months, 6 months is becoming a challenge. And here we need to think about how technology could help, and precisely how IoT could help. We know what we have around IoT. IoT we understand as a bunch of sensing devices, collecting lots of data, sending this data to gateway, packing nicely. Maybe in our solutions we do that way. We have an actual processing, pre-processing of data. We're not sending everything into the cloud because it doesn't make sense to send trash into the cloud. We only wanted to have in cloud something that is meaningful. So we're already pre-processing data at the edge. We're sending data into the cloud where we do business analytics, business decisions. And this is actually what we're looking to do. But in manufacturing floor or in the hospitals where people are really walking around doing different things, it's very difficult to answer all of these questions. Especially important, the question is where. People are moving along the way in a manufacturing floor or in a hospital, and it's very difficult to find out where the people are, and we need to look into technology that will help with this. I was talking about the fact that, and you're probably guessing that there is a technology that can help with this, and I will introduce you to this technology. But maybe one last step into procedures is super important. Why people really need these procedures in manufacturing, in healthcare, is that they can do things with a quality, with a consistent quality. If there's no procedures, you know that, if I'm manufacturing something, then every single time I'm manufacturing that without procedures will be kind of different. And we would like to make sure that every single product is kind of the same, or every single process is the same. Example, in healthcare, there is a nurse that is approaching into the patient bed, and she needs to do that with the process, otherwise she could spread, for example, some disease if she's not cleaning her hands properly, things like that. And so it's super important, I just wanted to highlight that. And right now get into technology. And we're talking here about IoT, and like I mentioned, IoT is a bunch of sensors, and we deliver solutions on the sensing devices. But there is a specific flavor of IoT that can be applicable here, and the systems like that, they are called RTLS, real-time location services. This type of systems, they basically have sensors inside of the buildings that gives you a precise location in real time. So for example, I could badge or tag card, device, and person, and I could, through the system, find out in time, real time, where is the location exact in the floor. The GPS is not working inside of manufacturing. GPS is not working inside of the hospital. There's a lot of iron in the ceiling. So you need to find a solution that is doing that. There are some solutions out of the way that can do that. We actually going to be talking about one that we have developed. And if you kind of have a system inside of your facility that is able to give you locations of the object in the real time with very high precision, then you get 4 out of these 5 whys. So just one system is providing you 4 of these 5. And then the remaining 1 and H is something that you need to do from the perspective of your business. Every business is different. That's the how, the you know how. And with collecting your insight of a business plus the 4 whys that are coming from the system, you get answers for everything. And of course, in order to provide that, you need to have good RTLS systems. And I would like to talk a little bit about good RTLS systems. In my opinion, this is my personal view on what means good. And just to tell you, I will, in the end of the day, I'm end of this presentation, introduce the system, but this is applicable 100% to what we have developed. So first of all, flexibility. The flexibility needs to be there because the system itself, giving you ability to locate object, if it's not flexible, then you could just get the locations. Through flexibility, we mean that you can, for example, correlate your locations with something else. One example I'm going to give you. If person is present in this particular room, then we keep lights on. If there is no one in the room, then we can turn off the lights. That generates some potential savings to somebody who is managing the facility. And there's a connections between 2 systems. The system that is managing the lights and the system that is providing your locations. Flexibility needs to allow you to connect these 2. Then, of course, the type of a system, if you look into if we're talking about a good RTLS system, is a system that has everything in it. So you're not buying hardware somewhere else, you're not buying software somewhere else, you're not going to somewhere else's cloud. Everything is provided from one vendor. So that's super important because that is the interoperability problems are gone if you have that. And then easy to install. This requires infrastructure. Like I mentioned, GPS is not working inside of the buildings, and you can get the locations based on triangulations or based on some radio signal analytics, right? And to do that, you need to have reference points. So there need to be an infrastructure into it, but it's super important that this infrastructure is easy to install. Because nobody wants to put a lot of effort and a lot of money in order to build this infrastructure. So for example, in a building like this one, it would be wise to use this ceiling because it's easy to put the cables on it. So there are ways to also deliver data using radio. So easy to install means that you're taking an advantage of all of these things that makes it super easy to install. Easy to adopt, that means that at some point the business intelligence needs to happen at the organization decision maker software. Hospital, they have hospital information systems, and the systems are making decisions, helping people that are running hospitals make a decision of what's going on there. So you need to send the data there. There need to be a simple way to integrate APIs, connectivity, and things like that. And of course, for us, super important that system is independent. And we designed a system that is not dependent on any cloud vendor. You can put it on your own server in your facility. You can use Azure or AWS, or you can just build on the third-party cloud vendor or server vendor, and it will work. It's super important that there is no this dependency, because this dependency are creating the stickiness that is later over time more and more expensive. We would like to avoid that. Therefore, our solution is totally standalone. And of course, it's super important that it is actually cheap. People are not willing to pay a lot, and we managed to get it cheap through the fact that we design hardware, software, and embedded software, everything in one hand. So we control BOM, bill of material of every single hardware component. We have capabilities of making some customizations. We have capabilities of productions and through our partners and everything. So that way we can generate cost efficiency. So you see, I was talking really about the workflow processes. You have abilities to measure the location. You can take advantage of this data, and you can connect this with your business analytics, and you can tell, hey, this over 3 months, I see that there is a weaknesses. So, for example, there is manufacturing, and the person is going from one side to the other side, taking goods from one side, putting goods on somewhere else. We change the process. We switch. We put goods closer, and we're saving 5 minutes of the operations time. That type of an improvement is allowing to produce more or maybe reduce the staff. And this is what you can accomplish with it. But the other super important topic in here is that how you can leverage this technology to also increase employee safety. And you You would ask, safety is something that we all are aware about, and we don't really even considering this as something that could generate you savings. But look into that from different perspective. Every single accident that is happening here in the United States cost average $1.1 thousand just because it's happening in manufacturing, in healthcare, whatever else. And this is, you say, nothing. It's $1,000. It's just okay. But if there is, this accident leads to any medical situations, involvement of any hospitals, that average cost rise up into 44,000. And you know, I know a lot of the companies in manufacturing and in hospitals, and believe me, they're not really willing to spend that and give it away. So these organizations are kind of looking for prevention. There's a lot to do with preventions, and you know that. This is very obvious. They're asking to wear helmets in the manufacturing facilities. They're asking to wear gloves in healthcare. They have protective shoes. All of that is there, right? So it's actually kind of interesting because they're already making this few steps forward in order to prevent. But guess what? Accidents still happens, right? So now we wanted to look into what technology can do in order to prevent that. Maybe more than just giving the protective helmets, glasses, and shoes, right? And then, you know, we're talking about RTLS, so there is a way. There is really a way to do that. And it's very similar to what we did with the workflow processes. So basically, we can get these 4 whys. Why is this happening when we're using RTLS system? And here I would like to get into a few real examples that we implemented with our customers. First one is very obvious. The biggest number of accidents in manufacturing happening when there is something to do with forklifts. The forklifts, you know, as troublemakers in manufacturing, people are actually walking, they can get in under the forklift really easily, right? But imagine you know the location of forklift in real time, as well as you have locations of your employees in real time. So then you can implement proximity warning. In a forklift, could be a lamp, could be a tablet that is pointing out from which direction somebody is coming, and that is allowing you to prevent a lot of forklift accidents. Believe me, every single manufacturer we're talking to, they had over the couple of years at least one forklift accident, and they are very costly. So that's one example. The other example on saving is I'm going to give you a real example that we have implemented in one of the manufacturing facilities down there in Europe. These guys are producing shoes. It's kind of interesting factory. You know, they have a little bit of the machines that build the bottom of the shoes, and then they use leather. They actually producing not that type of a shoes you would walk out on the outside or maybe for a date or so. They're building actually the protective shoes that you use in manufacturing and healthcare. And the point is there that they're using heavy presses in order to cut the piece of material that will be inside of the shoes. It's a very dangerous machine. You put your hand and the hand is gone. So what we have developed for them is that we have taken these machines to the manufacturing floor, and we have given badges to those employees, right? And we mentioned we set the system the way in which that if there is no operator that is authorized to use this heavy press, trained, the heavy press will never stop. If there are 2 people next to the heavy press, there should be only one operator, it will not stop. So, you know, again, knowing a location of a person, we can implement certain security things over this manufacturing floor that we did with them. Well, I will go other example. There is something happening, let's say fire. We need to evacuate everybody from the facility. And what we have a location. So now we can also track the space that is outside of the building where it's evacuation zone, and we can count if everybody managed to get there. And you know, it's kind of funny because everybody, when I'm saying that, is asking, hey, it's fire and you have infrastructure. What's going to happen if your infrastructure is going to burn? Yes, you're right. We are going to lose that location. But again, we have the last known locations of that person that is missing. That is, believe me, a lot more than knowing nothing about the locations of a person. So that type of stuff we do. Other actually interesting example with forklifts could be that we actually can start the forklift only when there is an authorized operator in a forklift that can run it, and that has a permission, that has a training and everything else. So there would be situation in which somebody else is from the manufacturing firm wanted to kind of use a forklift, but has no abilities or skills to do that. It wouldn't be possible. One last thing I wanted to tell you: the solution of ours. You can think about tags, and I will show you a few tags. But one innovative thing that we are doing is actually we are putting the stacks into the shoe. So we don't even giving badges to these people. We're giving them protective shoes in manufacturing, and then we track the locations of the shoe. They do not care about anything. So it's kind of interesting. I wanted to show you the shoe. Actually, I brought the shoe from Europe with me, but unfortunately my luggage is missing since Sunday. So it's an fun shoe. But you, on our webpage you can find some of the stuff. So this is about the security. And what very last thing I would like to talk a little bit about the system. So the system is named Traction. So like I mentioned to you, it's end-to-end. So we provide everything, beginning from hardware, and there are some examples of our badges. On the left side, you see Anchor. This is actually an example of an infrastructure. It's very tiny, that type of Anchor that you put. And what else you need to know about the solution? We are using ultra-wideband as a radio. We were actually exploring a lot of options for the technology. So we do have IoT software. We have IoT platform. And customer of ours, they said, we love your platform. It's flexible, it's cheap. You do not have all of this overhead that bigger platform providers are providing to you. We get straight into the point with our software. But they wanted us to develop a solution that gives this, locations in the area. And we were looking into Bluetooth solutions. We were exploring what we can do with Wi-Fi and 5G and so on and so forth. But we learned that nothing is giving us good enough precision to develop professional, good, accurate systems. So we decided to go and implement on our own. And we found that ultra-wideband is giving us this huge ability to escape from 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth, where there's a lot of interference. And here everybody has a phone in a pocket. Everybody is fighting for this 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth. And our system cannot rely on fighting for the bandwidth. It needs to work every time. We're giving an accurate real-time position. So we're using ultra-wideband because there's more bandwidth that we can use. Apple is using ultra-wideband to track the keys. You know that kind of key devices? Exactly. So this is exactly the technology that we're using, but we're not using Apple. We're using our own. And I would say better, of course, but we can question on this one.
I just wanted to say, if I can, I put these in my luggage when I travel,
exactly.
So I can always track with my luggage.
Exactly. So this is kind of similar way we track our trackers, but we're doing that different way, because in Apple you kind of going into the location of and it gives you the direction arrows. This one, as you can see, we have the position of this always in the real time. So and then other thing is the badges. These are kind of nice badges that I put in here. For industry applications, we have a little bit more robust badges or tags that are more practical in the manufacturing facilities, right, where there's lots of going on, especially when we're tagging, for example, cards or devices. These need to be different tags. So we have a lot of flexibility in these tags. We have two versions of a system. One version is with this e-ink, very kind of, I would say, for e-ink through healthcare. And this badge is up and running for 30 days. Then you need to put it in induction charging. You can charge them, and for another 30 days. A second version of the system, we have a badges that will last for 2 years. So no need for charging, and it's very small. It's like a beacon, Bluetooth beacon. Software, like I said, gives you ability to do a lot of things just with the software itself. Create zones, doing a lot of provisioning for these devices, configuring the maps and everything, XYZ. But also, one additional thing that we have developed is every single thing that you see here, every single data, we're giving as an API endpoint. So you can integrate this with whatever you like. You have your own system that would take advantage of the location. We provide our locations. You don't need to even use our maps. There is a rule engine with it. It's kind of interesting because we combine that with IoT. For example, we could create a zone in here, and our IoT devices could be a camera, and we detect person getting into the zone, we can start recording. We can integrate through our rule engine that type of events, right? In hospitals, we have situations that they wanted to prevent patients escaping. So we're giving a patient's attack, and then when there is a door, there is a zone. You're laughing, but there is a case for that, and it's a big case. Right? So if you are going into the hospital for a triage, and they triage you as a maybe not a live treatment patients, they give you a green badge, and they ask you to sit in 5 hours and waiting for your turn. There is a really, reason to escape at some point. It's 3.5 hours, and you're still sitting on this plastic chair, So this is what we do as well. Hey, this is a web page traction.com. This is the webpage for the solution. We are having here a lot of demonstrations. Every time our customers asking us to tell them about the system, we're always bringing that with us. We actually have a solution where we come 15 minutes earlier to the conference room, we're putting our infrastructure, and once we describe it like this, we can actually show a real use case. I would love to do that today. Actually, that was even a little bit of my plan. But unfortunately, and of course, on this particular use case, so we needed to make sure that at least we tell something through the presentation. So, questions?
Are we working with any military organizations on tracking troops, maybe embedding it in their boots as well?
This is what has to do outside, and we are really focusing inside, and actually inside and the space that is next to the facility. But we do talk with military. We do not have a project, but we have several leads, and weapons manufacturing where they wanted to track cages, known locations, and there are certain things about it. Actually, even yesterday I was in Tampa on the Synapse Summit. It's kind of technology Synapse Summit in Tampa. And there's a lot of military people there, and the one guy just came to me and asked about the way to use it in order to improve from a lean standpoint, the way how they doing stuff inside of the military. So they have the warehouses, they're putting things, they're loading weapons into the planes. They need to know whether that procedure is efficient or not efficient, or maybe they could do something to make it better, the efficiency higher. So they're looking into that, and hopefully we are also going to have some military projects. We actually have that in Europe as well. And believe me, these days, military is actually looking for a lot of solutions, right? Because it seems like there's a little bit bigger demand. You like it or not, I think we all want to be protected, but we do not like wars, right? So, any other questions?
I see the potential, like in buildings, when there's somebody at the front watching cameras and watching like everything's in order. Maybe having something like this.
We have applications in a public government, especially in Europe. You know, they've detected few Russian spies in public government houses. So now they're kind of looking into solutions where they can batch every visitor and know where the visitors are, whenever these visitors are not going into the zones. That's our. The other thing that we do with the facility, we actually have really interesting process with facility management where we're tying this with energy efficiency management. And you know, there's something to do with these lights, like I said. For example, there's no people, we turn these lights off. All of these optimizations for energy management. And actually, the system that runs beyond this traction solution is a standard IoT platform. So we can connect basically energy meters, and then we deliver all of this data into the data warehouse for analytics, and with location gives you a little bit more capabilities.
Yeah, I have been to a hotel with the lights in the hallway were completely dark, and as soon as somebody walked out, they came on, but they took like 2-3 seconds to come up. Right now, do they come very fast?
Well, we can basically have a zone next to doors, and we can detect a person that is approaching, so we can start it even 3 seconds before the person is entering the door. You know the locations in the real time, and that gives you a lot of possibilities, right? So you can play with this data as much as you like. Though here in US, we had a customer where they had a manufacturing facility, and they had this terrible accident that somebody went into the restroom Friday, end of the shift, and got a heart attack there. They found him Monday. You know, if we know the locations of people, we would tell at the end of the day, hey, there is somebody there, right? So it's people are kind of afraid for being tracked, but on the other side, if they do right things, and it's for their own safety, there should be no reason to really be afraid about it. Any other questions? I encourage you to go to our Traction webpage. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Hope you find your luggage soon.
Yes, exactly.